This is KCCK's Culture Crawl. I'm Dennis Green, and my guest today is Nile Dusdieker from the Eastern Iowa Orchid Society, who has a show coming up. Nile, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Of course, you hang around KCCK a lot. You're
you bet.
You're a great listener and supporter, and it's always fun to have you roll in. Not just to talk about the orchids, but I have to tell you, you must have been tending flowers before you came in today.
That's right.
Because you smell fabulous. You smell like you smell like pretty flowers.
Well,
I know that's not really a manly thing to say.
That's all right. That's all right.
It's really unfortunate we aren't smell-o-vision today because it's delightful.
But I wasn't tending the bulbophyllums today. Bulbophyllums are orchids that are known to stink.
Oh, are those? Yeah, those are the ones that smell like corpses?
That's right.
Yeah.
Those are the big stinkies. But yes, no, it's fun. It's good to be here, and it's good to talk about our upcoming orchid show.
Which is next weekend, right? Yeah. Next Saturday and Sunday.
It's the 17th and 18th of October. So not this coming weekend, but the next weekend.
And how long have you been doing these shows?
This is our 4th annual show. And it's going to be, I think, the biggest show that we've had to date. We have orchid clubs coming from all the surrounding states. We have the Kansas City Club coming from Missouri. Omaha's coming over. The Minnesota Club is coming down. We have the Madison Club from Wisconsin, 2 clubs from Illinois, and 3 clubs from Iowa. Plus, we have vendors and other exhibits, and we have a number of exhibits that are going to be of orchid collectibles, and there's going to be at least 2 orchid quilts present. So it should be a fun show. And I should also mention the Bonsai Association is going to put up a small exhibit as well to help promote their enjoyment of flowers.
I've always enjoyed bonsai. I think I've never had the patience to get too involved with it, but so obviously, collecting and raising and breeding orchids is it's a big thing for the people who are interested in it. Why orchids? I mean, why not carnations or daisies? Of course, roses are certainly the same way, but not every flower. What is it about the orchid that makes it something that people want to grow and study and make it such a make a hobby of it?
Well, a couple things. First, orchids, I think, have this exotic reputation, and they are unusual. There's 30,000 species of orchids, and so I think the unusual nature is part of it. The other thing is that over the years, back from Victorian England, people have been collecting orchids, and furthermore, they've been registering these orchids as to hybrids and where they came from and descriptions. And if they make a hybrid, they register the parents, and then that hybrid can be registered with another hybrid, listing it as parents. And so there's a huge database. There's a huge genealogy, if you will, of these orchids.
There's excellent record keeping.
That's right. And that's different than some of the other areas like roses and daisies and daylilies, although much the same thing could be said for some of those societies. But I think that's part of it. And I think the other thing is they can be grown pretty much anywhere as long as you give them the environment that they want to live in. And most of the orchids that are going to be at the show are tropical orchids. So they've either been grown in basements under lights or in greenhouses or on window shelves, things of this sort. They're really not that hard to grow, and you've got something then is very unusual and something that will stay in flower for sometimes several weeks at a time.
As you said, and as we've talked about before, it is the tropical orchids that people think about, but they are grown all over the world, and there are native orchids in Iowa, aren't
there? There are 26 native orchids in Iowa, and they are all terrestrial orchids. That means they grow in the ground, and they're not the same as tulips, but they're similar in that they are dormant in the winter. They come up from a corym, not a bulb. They will flower in the spring, and then they'll grow through the summer to build up their system and go dormant again for the fall. And actually, worldwide, probably 30, maybe 40% of the orchids are in that category of being terrestrial as opposed to being epiphytic, which means they grow on trees or rocks. And those don't necessarily go dormant, although some do, but most of those will grow year-round. And their blooming cycle is more related to whether it rains or not.
Do you have a favorite orchid or breed or flower that you kind of specialize in, or?
I guess I would say that the cattleyas are probably our favorite, my wife and I. They're the large corsage orchids, and we have a fair number of the old hybrids, which tend to be taller and larger plants. They're not readily available today, but when they bloom, they're just absolutely gorgeous. The only problem with them is they take up a fair amount of space.
They're big. Yeah, how big? You have a greenhouse attached to your house. Is it almost as big as your house?
No. Unfortunately, the greenhouse is too full. We have too many orchids. We have them kind of layered in the greenhouse, but the greenhouse sits atop our third garage.
Oh, okay.
And so
a nice sunny spot.
It's a nice sunny spot, and then everything goes outside in the summer.
Okay.
Everything goes outside we have an outdoor pergola, which we have fenced in because the squirrels like to eat orchid roots. But everything goes outside, and they just love it because they think they're in the tropics during the summer.
Now, do you actually plant them in the ground or take them out in their containers?
No, they go out and they hang in baskets and pots and things of this sort. And that's the nice thing about people on our club. We have a nice variety of orchids that we are going to be exhibiting in our display. And that's because people grow in different conditions. We have people that grow in the basement that grow primarily slippers. We have one member of the club that grows semi-hydroponically and does a marvelous job of that. So he grows in little volcanic pellets with water. We have people that grow in their windowsills. One lady grows the Phalaenopsis, the moth orchids, in her bathroom because it's so humid. It's really fun. So you'll see a lot of different things. And at the show, the other interesting fact is that simply having a club from Kansas City and a club from Minnesota, this time of year, you're going to see what's blooming, but different things are going to be blooming in Missouri as opposed to Minnesota. Even though they're grown in a greenhouse in a tropical situation, it's just
the quality of the sunlight is different.
That's right.
Soil's different.
That's right.
Talking with Nile Dusdieker from the Eastern Iowa Orchid Society about orchids in general, I guess, but also the Orchid Show, which is coming up next weekend. So clubs come from all over to exhibit, and then there's some judging. That's the other reason that they come, is to get judged and rated, right?
That's right. The show really has two main components. For the people that exhibit, their plants will be registered and they're judged in classes, and so they'll have a ribbon judging, much like you see at the fair. And then select orchids from exhibits will be picked for national judging, which is called American Orchid Society judging, and we have judges coming from actually throughout the Midwest to come and judge the show. We have judges coming from Kansas City, and we have judges coming from Chicago, and actually one judge is coming down from near Green Bay. And so that, if any orchids receive a national award, of course that's published and is part of a record and will be referenced anytime that particular orchid comes up for judging in the future. But I think the other thing is most people that exhibit at the show, they enjoy their orchids and they'd like to share it with other people, and that's really the thing that the public, I think, would get out of coming to the show. You're going to see 500-600 orchids of all different kinds, much different than you'll see at the box stores, and hopefully they'll be in nice displays. The greenhouse at Noelridge is a perfect place for the orchid show, because the first greenhouse at Noelridge is the tropical greenhouse. They have a permanent collection. They have a banana. They have jasmine. They have cactus. They have a lot of things growing there. And what we do is we put the Orchid Show right in amongst their collection. And we don't have to use a lot of artificial backdrops and things of this sort. So the orchid displays just sort of meld right in with what's...
It looks like a natural environment.
It is just lovely. It's just absolutely lovely. And so that's really what's made it a lot of fun.
Speakers, growing tips and things like that, opportunities for people who maybe don't grow orchids but are kind of interested in finding out how they can get involved?
Sure. We have a lecture each day at 1 o'clock on basically how to grow orchids, how to repot orchids, and the current president of the club, Bill Page, is going to be giving that demonstration, and then he's going to be hanging around afterwards for question and answer periods. Also, there's 3 vendors. The 3 vendors come out of the Chicago area, and they will have growing sheets, and they'll have orchids for sale. So that will be nice.
So you can get started on your own greenhouse.
That's right. Well, or just get started on trying some orchids in your windowsill.
Well, again, the Eastern Iowa Orchid Show is next weekend, the 17th and the 18th. It's at Noelridge Greenhouse, Northeast Cedar Rapids. And what are the hours?
Okay, the hours on Saturday are 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., and the hours on Sunday are 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. It is free, it's open to the public, it's handicapped accessible, and it's kid-friendly, because the kids can get right in there.
You can't hurt an orchid. Kid can't hurt the orchids.
Well, they could, but most of them won't.
Yeah.
No.
And I know you said you wanted to thank the Cedar Rapids Parks and Rec Department for letting you use the space there at the greenhouse.
Cedar Rapids Parks and Recreation has been extremely helpful to us. This is the 3rd year that we've had it at Noelridge. It's our 4th show. And they have just been absolutely wonderful. And of course, it showcases the good work that they do at the greenhouse. I think the public doesn't realize how much of our beautiful parks and flowers and the roses and the care really emanate from that facility and from the people that work there. And there's a lot of volunteers that work there. There's Friends of Noelridge, which make a big difference as well.
So again, the Orchid Show is coming up next weekend, the 17th and the 18th. Does the Society have a website where people can look at, find out more and get the schedule?
It's called Eastern Iowa Orchid Society. .org.
Okay, all one word. Nile Dusdieker from the Eastern Iowa Orchid Society. Thanks again for coming in, and good luck with the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you much.